we are officially live. All right, here we are. This is episode 20 of InfoSec to Security. It's difficult, Matt. I think you're on mute.
Yep, you got to say that 5 times fast. InfoSec to insanity.
Right, it's InfoSec to insanity. You know why I'm thinking about insecurity?
Because that's part of your book. Unsecurity is your book.
Funny you mentioned that. Team talked me into Tuesday. I was talking to Drew. Drew is one of the executives at FR Secure. And he said, hey, are you going to update on security? Because I published that in 2019. And I was like, do you want me to? He's like, well, yeah. I'm like, all right. So I'm writing Unsecurity version 2 right now.
Well, so let's introduce Steve. Steve's new here.
Is that what you want to do, Matt?
Well, I'm going to tell you, you probably don't need to update that book because nothing's really changed. So why would you update it?
Oh, dude, no, I'm going to tell you the new version.
Okay.
Is going to be amazing.
We'll get into it. All right.
All right. So this is episode 2, just to be official. This is episode 20 of InfoSec to Insanity, as Matt reminds me. And we have a special guest tonight. We have a special guest. It's Steve Shelton. Steve is, I'll just tell you, I'm reading right off his LinkedIn profile right now. So Steve, lots of really cool stuff. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Green Shoe Consulting, which is really, really cool. Matt's been trying to put me in touch with Steve for a while, but I suck at messaging. I do a lot of things, actually, but whatever. But it's really cool because he's here to talk about mental health. The three of us are going to talk about mental health in the information security industry. We're going to get real. We're going to be honest. I struggle with mental health issues. I have therapists that I've regularly talked to that I rely on heavily to get me through the day-to-day stresses of, 30 some odd years in this industry. It's, I've burned out multiple times. I can tell you what that's like, what that feels like. It's not the end of the world. You always come back from it, but not always. If you're persistent and you have the right support, you come back from that. So Steve, welcome. I'm super glad you're here. You want to say anything? Introduce yourself to anybody who's listening.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm glad to finally meet you. Matt's been saying a lot of good things, and I ran into some of the FutureCon, some of the FR Secure folks at FutureCon in Chicago last week.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah. So we had some good talks with a couple of the folks there, and really it's, I've experienced my own stress and burnout to an extent, and that's part of what sent me on the path to make the change to leave corporate America and do my own thing. And we're just really focused on trying to help all the cybersecurity leaders, teams, and organizations change the industry and alleviate the suffering of chronic stress and burnout.
It's a pain in the ass, man. Burnout it sneaks up on you. I wrote a blog post about it a while back. And I try to be, I've always been the guy that says the shit that I think everybody's thinking, but nobody wants to say. And that, when you do that, you stick your neck out. You take an ass whooping for it, but at the end of the day, do I really give a shit what people say? Sometimes I don't.
It's also where you grow too. You grow because because you're sticking yourself out there. It's like an uncomfortable question, but you're helping yourself grow.
Matt?
No. By asking those questions, you're helping yourself grow, but also you help other people grow by helping them realize they can do it too, and you're not going to die by asking a question. So
that's super true, man. That's
it's
a good point.
Twofold.
That's a really good point. And you can't do it without being honest and support. There are days, I don't know if you guys have felt this, but there have been days I can remember multiple times when I've just broke down crying. You're this big guy, big beard, biker, and people think, you're this tough ass, can handle anything. No, man, there are days when I want to give up. There are days I don't want to do this anymore. There are days when I say, fuck this industry, fuck people. I just want to, crawl in a corner somewhere. That's not the answer.
It's part of the challenge in this industry, right? I come from a farming military family, so there's not a lot of men in my family that talk about feelings and emotions and showing that vulnerability. And so I'm the black sheep in the family, so to speak, because in 7th grade, I'd be at the library reading about Plato and Socrates and all this stuff that was blowing my mind. But then also I played football through college, and that environment is very focused on the tough macho. You can't show any weakness, and talking about feelings and emotions is weakness. And it's like, no, that's actually hindering your ability because you're trying to duct tape all of this stuff together when you're getting the crap kicked out of you. And there's a lot of that in the cybersecurity industry too, of like, you're conditioned, whether overtly or subtly, to not talk about any mental and emotional challenges because that's been seen as a stigma of negativity of, well, that's a weakness, therefore you can't perform, so get them out of the way and get somebody else in there. And that programming or conditioning needs to change because there's so many people, especially coming out of COVID, that it's just everywhere. So
that's the bullshit. That's the bullshit. People need to get it through their heads that the stigma is absolutely bullshit. When you're real with yourself, when you're authentic with yourself, when you reach out for help, when you need help, that's a sign of strength. That makes you more of a man. That makes you real. That makes you the best person you can be. And the people who view, mental issues, stress, burnout, depression, anxiety, ADHD, on and on. If you view those things as being a weakness, they're only a weakness if you don't do something about it. And it just pisses me off because over the years, I've lost 6 people. 6 people that were good, great people that committed suicide because of the stigma. I don't blame them. I blame the damn stigma. I blame us. I blame the society for not making it comfortable for us to share real shit with each other. And our industry, we're viewed as defenders. We're viewed, if you get a bunch of security people together, we do a lot of posturing in this industry. We do a lot of bullshit. Well, this is what I did. I hacked this. I hacked it. Okay, great. That doesn't define you. That doesn't make you who you really are. And so sometimes we use it as a defense mechanism sometimes, but I think from people outside of those circles, being in this industry for 35 years, I don't mind posturing. But for the newcomers into this industry, maybe that aren't as secure in their own shoes, it's really fucking intimidating to them.
It's more damage
tears
than
them down.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, that's
brother.
the thing too. Like, I have the benefit of working with the local high school here in terms of their student athletes, colleges in the local area and their athletes, and then executives in the IT world. And having that spectrum, there's different developmental stages, and I get to see adults all the way down to 14 and 15-year-olds and what they're dealing with. There's a lot of similarities in terms of what you're saying, like the identity aspect of who am I, trying to align that to your sport and what you're achieving in that, or IT and cybersecurity, trying to align that to all the things that you've done and gotten good at. Because there's an underlying aspect of not feeling good enough, not feeling like you matter, not feeling like you belong, whatever it is. And most of it ultimately is all bullshit. Because it's all the thoughts and the emotions that we attach to an experience or the environment
have to
around
ourselves.
us. Right.
It's not really what anybody else is experiencing or thinking. Everyone else is thinking about their own things. All these are thoughts and stuff we're manifesting to ourselves.
Right. The challenge too
I
is,
think
sorry to
it's
interrupt.
worse. Doesn't it get worse with social media? The ability, because a lot of things we put on social media aren't real.
Totally.
We don't put the negative shit. We don't put the shit that's not going to get likes and clicks and other stuff like that. So you read social media and get caught up in it. After the Trump, the last couple of weeks, with Trump, I've been reading, and you have to have this sense of like context, this sense of awareness that what I'm reading is one perspective. There are thousands, millions. Everybody has their own perspective that's different than mine. So what I'm reading, it may seem like sensational. It may seem like shit. I don't think it's that. I don't think the same way as this person. What's wrong with me? It's not. If you're going to go on social media, you have to be able to put that into its bucket and perspective because it'll tear you the fuck up. along with all the other shit.
Right.
I was not able to do that.
There's a lot of the media is focused on pushing out, getting the quickest story out there that's focused on fear and creating a sense of like, you need to look at this stuff to grab your attention. And it's just like cybersecurity. There's so much fear, uncertainty, and doubt that's pushed in order to sell the products, in order to like do the job or whatever it is. But the reality is there's so much outside of our control, and really boiling it down and pulling our focus back into what we have control over, which is very little. You know, our attitude, our effort, our energy, and how we choose to respond. We also have control over our thoughts and feelings, but we're so conditioned to just react and not take a step back and allow some space between that stimulus and how we are going to respond to choose the response, you know, but also knowing there is so little humility in our culture, in society, in that aspect of I think it's a Buddhist saying or proverb or something like that. But the idea is there's 4 Buddhist monks. They're all blind, but they're all standing on different sides of an elephant trying to describe the elephant, right? So they're touching it. One's got the trunk, one's got the tail, one's got a leg, and one's got the side of the elephant. And they're like, yeah, the elephant is this long hose-like thing. And the other one's like, what are you talking about? This thing feels like a dinosaur. So they all have their own different perspective, but they don't have the ability to see the whole thing, right? And so pulling that together and working together to be like, okay, obviously I'm saying something different or feeling something different than you are. Help me understand what you're feeling, because I have something completely different. We don't do that.
No, that's totally true. So if you're watching this live, feel free to answer something in the comments, ask questions. You know, I think what you have here is 3 different perspectives with different backgrounds but we're all genuine. And I think, you know, we're all here to help. Nothing breaks my heart more than seeing people get taken advantage of or being hopeless. I mean, there's always hope. As long as you got breath in your body, man, there's hope. And it may feel like you're down in the dumps and there ain't no hope. Trust me, there's hope. We're going to talk about it in this episode, you know, some of the deep shit, you know, I think that we found ourselves in, you know, the times when I've been down in the dumps and I felt like I had no hope, and, you know, some tips and tricks, some resources maybe to help you get out of that. Now, I want to back up just a little bit too, because, you know, Steve is joining us. He's new to us. You know, me and Matt, Matt's my boy. You know, I love Matt. He's, what's your nickname? What do I give you?
Yeah, for some reason I'm blanking on that right now.
You're Sue. You're Mr. Tsunami.
Yeah, Tsunami, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, Matt is Tsunami. But Matt, Steve, I wanted to talk about, you know, tell me about Green Shoe Consulting. What do you guys do? And second to that, what inspired you to create this thing?
So I'll answer the first one and then go to the second one. So Green Shoe Consulting is really similar to what your LinkedIn profile says, fixing a broken industry. There's so much stress and burnout in the industry. I sold cybersecurity software for 20 years and experienced it my own stress and burnout on the vendor sales side of the house, because there's a lot of upside down incentives and focus in terms of how they operate. So that's that thing. But then also witnessing and observing all the people that I worked with and sold to, the challenges from the security engineer analysts all the way up to the CISO. Nobody had done anything over the past several decades to provide any help in regards to alleviating the stress and the burnout. So I have a very interesting background. So I'll kind of try to weave this together to incorporate what led me into this. But the idea is we are researching and starting to launch the first peer-reviewed research on stress and burnout among CISOs right now. So we're pulling together
that's interesting.
40 CISOs to dig into that. And the idea is that we want to be able to understand what's causing this and leading to the stress and the burnout, because cybersecurity has the worst retention rates of any U.S. industry. And so that leads to low engagement and the stress and the burnout, the health issues, physically, mentally, and all those things. And so the job that cybersecurity professionals do is mission critical. You're protecting people's lives and livelihoods and all these things that we really need. And if you're going to be able to do that and do it well, you need to be able to have the support and the ability to do that mentally, physically, and all that. And there's a lot just lacking in that area. So during COVID, during the lockdowns, I had just gotten certified to teach yoga. I'm a Tai Chi practitioner. I've got a background with social emotional work. What's that?
Hi, what?
Tai Chi. You don't know Tai Chi?
Yeah.
Oh, so
But
Kung Fu.
I'm guessing some of our listeners don't either. So this will be a good education.
Yeah. So, you know, Kung Fu, Bruce Lee, martial arts,
Maybe.
right? Yeah. So Tai Chi is the
Is that
slow
where he kicked
internal
it free?
version of Kung Fu. So Kung Fu being the fast, explosive martial art, Tai Chi is more internalized. It's almost like a moving yoga, but it requires you to move all like incredibly slow. So for somebody like me that's a former football player, it's counterintuitive for me, but it's mentally challenging because it forces me to slow down and be in the moment. So it's really easy to have my mind running.
I'm very good at moving slow.
This is a really, really good practice.
Yeah,
So
I like what we're talking about here. So, all right, so Tai Chi, that's really cool. All right, yeah.
So
we
all
can
those
continue. That was
things-
just interesting. Yeah.
yeah. And so we could talk about that too. I say that because so during COVID, I was really just fed up with the software sales space and industry and environments that I'd been in. And so my high school football experience, the coaches were more focused on character development, teaching us to be good people. There's more to life than sport. And so they were teaching us to be good leaders. Leaders lift others up, where nobody on the team was above or below anybody else. And so we all are working in the same direction and looking out for each other and that type of thing. And we were stewards of the team, the school, and the community, meaning we left things better than when we found them. Those values lined really well with my farming military family because we're very values based in the family too. And so that stuff I took with me. And so when I went to college to play football, I thought that the environment was going to be like that because it was the most cohesive team environment I've ever been a part of. Then I got to college. It was not that. It was opposite. It was performer, get out of the effing way, right? We don't care what's going on with you mentally and emotionally. You got a job to do it. Otherwise, we'll find somebody else. So my college experience, I did not enjoy at all in that space. And it's very similar to the corporate experience that I had. 90% of the companies I worked for were more like my college experience. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. So I spent several years with Symantec, and that was very similar to my high school environment of a lot of good people looking out for each other, collaborating together, high trust and high performance. And it was great. And then leaving that, the majority of the experience was not that. So I wanted to get back into that high performing, high cohesion environment. So I had originally left corporate America with the idea that I was going to teach yoga to football players. And I knew the strength coach for the Green Bay Packers. I'm a huge Packers fan. Don't hold that against me.
Man, seriously.
No,
I know.
That's a win. We
Like,
like it.
oh shit. I'm dropping from this. I'm dropping from this fucking podcast right now.
Understandable.
Damn it.
So I called up.
Why
I
do
knew
we
the
have to
strength
bring that
coach.
up? I mean, you were talking about mental health. You just fucked my mental health, dog.
Yeah, I'm going to challenge and get you out of your comfort zone.
It's not our fault you can't win
I'm
a
never
championship.
comfortable. I always believe that comfort. I was raised in a military family too. My father, retired from the Marine Corps. My mother in the Marine Corps. I grew up on, Marine Corps bases. So it was an interesting being raised that way. There's a lot of things I really value about that. One was just this discipline. I don't look disciplined. I mean, you look at me, I look like a whatever. But there's certain things I do my job and I take it really fucking seriously. There's only one way to do this job. There's only one way to do information security, and that's the right way. And if you don't know what the right way is, or you want to debate the right way, I'm more than open to talk about that. Because there's too many people in this industry that are being taken advantage of. There's too many people in this industry that don't know what the fuck we're doing. And it's creating chaos. So I can really relate to that. I can relate to yoga. I did yoga once. My wife talked me into it. And not really interested in doing that again. A lot of gas. I farted a lot during that.
Good for it.
It is kind of
Yeah.
embarrassing, right? You're trying not
It
to
is.
fart in front of the class.
It is. It is really embarrassing, especially like in some of those positions. Like you can't clench your ass cheeks to not make the fart come out. It's coming
Just
out and it's going to a lot of noise.
Yeah.
But you mentioned some things about leadership because I've always been, I've always been an athlete. I was a D1 athlete at the University of Minnesota in swimming, believe it or not, which is a very individual sport, but there's a team component to it. So I played football, in high school. the thing I love about football is as long as everybody does their job, the team usually wins. It's, can everybody do their job? Does everybody understand what their job is? Does everybody, so as a linebacker in high school, yeah, there were a lot of times I wanted to stray from my position, where I see an opportunity over there, but my job is to fill this gap over here. Stay on path. That way, my coach, my leader, if it doesn't work out, it's not me. I was in my spot. I was ready to make that tackle. I had the fundamentals down. And so much of that comes, with information security too. It's like, as long as people did their jobs, the problem is most people don't know what the fuck their job is. There's a lot of confusion in this industry. There's a lot of misinformation in this industry. There's a lot of shortcuts, honestly, a lot of ego. I mean, it's a tough industry.
Just buying more stuff, thinking tech is going to solve the problem.
And I take for granted, being that I've been in this industry for so long now. I mean, it's almost like pioneer, it's been 35 years. But I talk to every week, I get calls where I talk to people that are trying to break into this industry. And I'm like, what the fuck is the problem? We've got this talent shortage. I'm trying to put myself, and that's the thing we should talk about tonight too, is just this empathy thing. But on the leadership side of things, I'm guessing your college football team probably sucked because it was shitty leadership. Because the way good leaders, yes, we're very clear about what our roles and responsibilities are, but nothing matters more to me. It's about priorities. Where I work at FR Secure, mission is number one. It's the whole reason why we exist. It's not to make money. The mission is to fix the broken industry. If you focus on the mission, you will make money. If you focus on the money, you will not make the mission. It's that simple. Now, in order for us to make the mission, we all have to be healthy. You get the best performance out of every single fucking player when they're healthy. And you have to understand what health is. Health isn't about physical health. That's one part of it. That's one component. You also have mental health. You can be the best performing, most physical, awesome, specimen ever, Tony Mandarich, which is, a player that you guys drafted in the Packers, fuckers. Physically, the guy was a rock star. Mentally, no. And what happened? Nothing, right? So you have to take advantage of physical health, mental health, and I think the third part that we don't talk a lot about is spiritual health. And it doesn't mean you have to be Christian. It doesn't mean you have to be Muslim. It doesn't mean you have to be Buddhist. What it means is you understand that there are things and forces that exceed you, that are bigger than you, that you can rely upon to find solace when nothing else makes sense, right? And so I love the fact that you talk about this because people don't think about that. They don't think about this. It doesn't matter what you do on the field. If you're unhealthy, it's not sustainable. We can't build a company on it. We can't build a mission on it. We can't win a championship on it. For us to be the best we can be, we have to focus on each other. We have to focus on our health and then the fundamentals, right? So I love that you brought that up because I'm so passionate about that as a leader at FR Secure, the company that I'm responsible for. That's a whole nother component. At the end of the day, I'm ultimately responsible for every single fucking thing that happens at FR Secure, everything. And I've had, debate about this. Well, you're not responsible for making sure there's toilet paper in the bathroom. I'm like, the fuck I'm not. I've delegated that to somebody. Somebody's supposed to do that. If somebody doesn't do that, it's my responsibility. So good leadership, another thing, component about good leadership is shit rolls uphill. It's hard, but it comes with the territory, which just means that I think for somebody, who is a leader, who is a CISO, who is leading the right way, if you feel the weight, if you feel the pressure, if you feel lonely, if you feel like I always say the wind blows the strongest to the top of the mountain. If you feel that, you're supposed to feel that. You're not supposed to do is have to go it alone. We're supposed to have people that you can rely on, people that you can talk to, people that you can get support from, therapists, whatever you need. That's normal. That's where you're supposed to be, man. That's why,
Right.
when I get a lot of people that come into this industry, newcomers that like, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be in 5 to 10 years? Oh, I want to be a CISO. Like, are you fucking sure you want to be a CISO? Why do you want to be a CISO? You better get that answer right. Why? The purpose. Because if you don't get that straight, man, it's gonna eat you up and spit you out. So anyway, I ranted a little bit there, but you got me going, Steve. Thank you.
No, I love it. One, I feel I am so grateful to be able to have these conversations because, to your point, this stuff is not talked about regularly or very much at all in corporate spaces. So one, you bring up a lot of points that are really important in terms of people coming into the industry and leadership, but specifically accountability and humility. So I mentioned humility already. I think that is such an overlooked, understated thing, not only through current leadership in different roles, but also for kids coming out that are in high school, in college, coming into the workforce. Kids that have been raised on technology and social media, to your point, are not seeing people being humble or being honest and authentic in a lot of spaces in social media or media in general. And so there's this aspect of like, well, that's success. So therefore, that's what I need to be aiming for. So the definition of success itself is really skewed for a lot of people, right?
That's a great point. What advice do we have for somebody? And it seems like you need to define success for yourself. What is success for you? What advice do you have for that?
So that to me hits on, because another aspect of that is understanding the values that drive your words, thoughts, and your actions. 2, understanding who you are as an individual, but also as a leader of any organization. What do you stand for, and what are the values you operate under? Because when I talk to companies or their teams, and I say, if I'm talking at a conference, how many of you in here, raise your hands, your companies have their values listed on their company walls, on their annual report, on their websites, whatever? Everybody's hands go up. And then I say, okay, how many of those companies actually live by and do everything in accordance with those values? Most hands go down. So
I don't understand that. That pisses me off, man, because values are values, man. I mean, it's like we hire and fire based on our corporate values. We publish them. We make them known. Our number one corporate value is we tell the truth. And I'm not immune to that. And I remind my leaders, my executives regularly that I'm not exempt from this. Hold me accountable.
Question.
For God's sake,
the
hold
other
me
one.
accountable because I'm a fucking train wreck. I will. And I tell people too, we talk about purpose, and maybe some of our listeners will find some use in this. My purpose is primarily spiritual. I believe, and I know actually, that I'm going to die someday. That's a guarantee, no doubt about it. When I die, I want to hear Jesus say, "Well done." That's all I give a shit about. I don't give a shit how much money I have. I don't give a shit how hot my wife is. My wife is hot, thank God, because man, that's awesome. I mean, nothing else matters to me. And so in that, you have this calling. What's my calling? My calling is to fix the broken industry. I'm not going to do it alone. It's a mission that far exceeds my ability. But that's the vision. Visions are not things that I can just accomplish, not just a checklist I can go do. They provide purpose to your life. And so how do I do that? I ask myself all the time, what I'm about to do, is it going to make the industry better, or they're going to make it worse? So from that comes things like, if you sell a customer something they don't need, I will run you over with my truck. I have a pretty good truck now. I mean, I had an S250 that was sweeter because I think I can get over bigger people. This one's a Ford Tremor, but it's like off-roadish. Yeah.
Why do we think that the corporate visions do not follow and trickle all the way down, right? if someone at the executive level is coming up with these mission statements, I feel like they're 100% bought in on this. Is there something in
Well,
the
they're
chain
not.
breaking down, or is someone not
They're not.
holding them accountable?
They're
They
not.
right, but the
They
accountable
they use
piece.
this as bullshit to make money. I mean, you can tell. I mean, I've said this before. There people, in my experience, generally fit into one of three buckets in terms of what their primary motivator is. And it's not that one bucket is exclusive, but there's one that's dominant. And the three buckets are money, ego, and mission. And so I do this every time I engage with a customer, I do my own OSINT. I try to figure out, is this a money person, a mission person, or an ego person? Because it's really going to change how I'm going to interact with that person. But, from a leadership perspective, if I was a money-driven person, money-driven people sell out. I mean, that's just it. It's money. I don't give a fuck if I lie to you. I don't give a fuck if I take advantage of you. So I'll create mission statements, vision statements, values. They sound good. They sell. I ain't going to live by them. And I think there's such a herd mentality. I think a lot of people don't actually pay attention and hold leaders accountable for it because you're supposed to. I mean, look at our own fucking government. I mean, hold that accountable.
Look at the efficacy of phishing attacks. Like I worked for a lot of email security companies previously, and an easy one was to spoof the email domain of a CFO to impersonate the CFO and have a message go to the accounts payable person saying, hey, this customer's account number's changed, change it and wire them X amount of dollars.
That's called a business email compromise. My favorite kind of attack.
So the reason that works and has been so prevalent is because of the power structures within our society of the top typically manages by fear. And you better do what I say because I'm paying you money. And if you don't do what I say, you're going to be fired. Right.
It goes back to asking more questions, which we talk about a lot. Like why?
Never stop asking questions. Yeah. Never.
Challenge that people above you.
Somebody feels empowered to do that.
Exactly. And a good leader, I mean, if you want to measure a good leader wants to be challenged. I want to be challenged. I want you to ask me why. I want you to, I have this mission. Tell me why you don't think it's going to work. Tell me, because it makes me better. If I can defend my purpose with logic and reason, it just reinforces my resolve. I need to be reinforced because it encourages me. It's hard, right? You run into, especially when you're counterculture, it's hard because people think you're full of shit. Always. Take the CISSP mentor program, right? We just announced the registration for the 2025 season. We started that in 2010, 6 students. We've trained over 100,000 students now for free. And most people don't know that about me, which is cool. It ain't about me. I'll give two fucks if you know it was me or not. If you do know it was me, that means I got to go to more meetings. I don't want to go to more meetings. The point is the mission, right? So I think you try to be this example of, and seriously, man, I'm touting a lot of shit that I do, but I'm just as fucked up as everybody else. It's just, this is what purpose does to you. When you have a purpose, you live it out. And I've told people over and over again. Yeah, and I've told people over and over again that anything you see admirable in me, worthy of praise, from where I come from, that's Jesus. It's just Jesus working through me. If you see the hypocrite, if you see the alcoholic, if you see the broken, stupid guy, that's me. That's where I am. And so it keeps me grounded, that it reminds me that I can't do these things. I can't find the strength to do these things. I can't survive without that spiritual piece, right? It's the spiritual piece, it's the mental piece, it's the physical piece. But the CISP mentor program, we released that, and I can't even tell you how many times people think, oh, it's free. Yeah, it's free. Yeah, really? Yeah, really. What's the catch? There's no fucking catch. It's free. And that's the bullshit, right? That's why I want to be challenged. Call out the bullshit. If you don't think it's actually going to be free, if you think I'm going to sell you something, if you think there's some, monetary, call it out. If you don't, what's going to happen if you don't call out the bullshit, if you don't challenge the bullshit, is I'm going to stray. I guarantee you. So I think good leaders open themselves up to that. And so ask them, question. If they say things like, well, because I said so, I've got a reason. I want a real reason. So I think I would encourage security people who report to, a CEO, who report to a CIO, kind of depending on where you're at. If you work for a leader that's not going to be open to these things, if you work for a leader that doesn't own it, that doesn't step up, beware. Seriously, you're going to have to compensate for that somehow. Recognize that it's a shitty leader, right? I'm not going to march up this hill. I'm not going to devote my life to this mission and follow this leader if he's a shitty leader. I'm going somewhere else.
The challenge too, because I agree with what you're saying, there's several thoughts that I've got, but one is, for the most part, I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt that most of us are just trying to do the best we can with what we've got. The challenge also is that that's not an excuse to continue to do and operate the same way just because you're operating with whatever perspective of the world or knowledge set that you've got, because even though my parents are great, they didn't have all the answers. They didn't do everything perfectly. They have their own challenges with their own behaviors and decisions and whatever it is, but they did the best with what they could, right? So for me, I believe we're all here to continue to grow and evolve and make the world a better place. That's not everybody's perspective. And so part of the challenge is understanding that that's one thing. I also believe everybody needs to be their own leader in their own life, because that herd mentality that you talk about, that is even bigger so in the younger generations. There's a concept of now with social media, growing up with that, where kids don't want to stand out on their own because there's not,
you can find
it's safe in the herd, right? If you step outside of the herd, you're left to be persecuted. Like you're the prey with all the predators out there trying to rip people down, because people are either going to lift others up or tear them down. And unfortunately, most of our society is focused on tearing down. And so many younger people don't want to step out and be their own leader and do their own thing. They want to be a part of that herd and be safe.
I think that's why this is...
people, you'll recognize the same thing as a CISO. If you've ever given, a presentation to a board of directors or executive leadership on an assessment, for instance, right? We did a risk assessment. Here are the results. One of the first things you're probably going to hear is, how do we compare? How do we compare with other organizations? Now, that's the herd mentality. And it's actually a tell, how you handle it. It's a case by case basis, but it's a tell on what kind of leader you're actually talking to, because a leader doesn't get, I think it was, who was the hella good swimmer?
Michael
Phelps.
Michael Phelps. I saw a quote by Michael Phelps. He said, winners focus on winning, losers focus on winners, which I've always taken to heart as a leader. Like, I don't give a shit what the competition's doing. I don't care. If we focus on being the absolute best we can be and let the chips fall where they fall, we can sleep well at night knowing that we've become the best us we can be. That's sort of the point. When you hear that herd mentality thing, and one of the tells, like I said, again, is how do we compare? It's a tell of what kind of leader this is. Because I think a good leader would be more focused on how do we be the best we can be? How do we leverage these things, information security investments, to our advantage to provide the most value to the organization? And I don't fault them, because I think, you mentioned accountability. There is no accountability in this industry. Again, I'll say it. There is no accountability in this industry. Leaders are not held accountable. Who's ultimately responsible for information security in any organization? It's who's ever at the top. it's the board of directors. If there is no board of directors, CEO. If it's no CEO, it's the owner. Whoever sits at the top of this mountain, that's who's ultimately responsible for information security. So then you have to ask the question, why don't we hold them accountable? The biggest career things, I guess, most newsworthy-ish things, I don't give a shit about that either, but was the Target breach. The Target breach of 2013, one of the many lawsuits in that breach was, there were a lot of lawsuits, but the one I played a role in was, it's called a derivative action. And in a derivative action, it's the shareholders are filing suit against the board of directors. Their claim is that the board of directors were negligent, that they didn't leverage the assets of this public company. Target's a big public company. They didn't adequately protect the assets of the organization, right? So you go through this process, and for me, it was 14 months. What happens when that happens, because it's Target suing Target, essentially, is the court appoints what's called a special litigation committee. A special litigation committee is an impartial body of lawyers and me, which was awkward as fuck because I don't like lawyers, to investigate the allegations made by the shareholders and then make a recommendation back to the court on whether or not we should proceed with this. And so you go through all of this, in my opinion, as a security person, absolutely negligence throughout. Single factor authentication on a vendor portal that was publicly displayed on a link off the website. That alone. The fact that you never patched the environment behind that, which was an extranet, right? I mean, there were two complete versions behind. The fact that from that extranet, you could access the corporate intranet website. And on that intranet website, there were admin credentials that were stored in plain text, which then, it was an easy transition all the way to the credit cards. And so when you ask my opinion, this was so fucking negligent. The reason why the recommendation, and I don't make the recommendation back to the court, it's the lawyers who do that. So all throughout, I kept saying, in my opinion, this is negligent. And throughout, the lawyers would always ask, in your experience working with other organizations, is this uncommon? Have you seen this before? And over and over and over again. Yeah. Yes, it's a fucking problem everywhere. Well, that's what makes it not negligent. So the herd mentality propagates through this kind of lack of legal shit, right? The fact that you have this herd mentality from a leadership position is just reinforced by our inability to understand what security actually is and not defining what's negligent and what's not negligent. So anyway, another rant. Sorry, I'll talk too much. My bad.
So let's get back on the mental health.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to cut you off, Matt. Have you ever listened to any Simon Sinek talks on YouTube?
Simon Sinek. Oh my God, one of my favorite people on the planet.
So he talks about this concept of the infinite game versus the finite game, right? What game are you playing? And he gives the definition being the finite game is like basketball or football, right? You've got a defined amount of time that you're going to play the game. There's going to be a winner or loser for the most part, typically, unless you end up in a tie randomly. But the idea there's going to be a winner and a loser. It's a zero-sum game. An infinite game is a never-ending game. So there's different rules. There's not an end point, but it's ongoing. So you have to have different strategies for an infinite game than you would for a finite game. So he gives the example of Microsoft versus Apple. So he went to Microsoft to go talk to their executives. Their whole focus was, what's Apple doing? How do we beat Apple? Right? That was their whole focus. Then he goes to Apple. No talk about Microsoft whatsoever. Their focus was, how do we help teachers teach better and students learn better? That was their focus. So to your point, focusing in on what they had control over and trying to be the best that they could be to help serve their customers that they were serving, right? That also gets into this aspect of, I talk endlessly to the high school, college, and adult executives on comparison is the thief of joy, right? If you're comparing yourself to others, You're taking all control away from yourself and what you have the capability and capacity to do to improve yourself. And that alone is such a tremendous aspect of being able to grow and get better and be competent in skills that you have the ability to develop.
Well, and I think that's why these
Sorry, Matt, I keep
conversations.
walking over you. Go ahead, man.
I
Sorry.
think
I'm
that's
gonna
why
shut up.
these conversations are so important, because we're normalizing the conversation and talking about comparing ourselves and stuff. And I went through, this transformational thing, whether that's, a business scam or not. You still learn some cool things in there. And one of the things, we talk about is some people are ready now, some people are ready tomorrow, some people are never ready. But I question whether people are never ready because they're not comfortable talking about the things they're feeling. And I think talking more about mental health, anxiety, all these things can help open up more space for them to become ready and start thinking and being more aware of those intrusive thoughts and comparison thoughts and being able to rationalize.
Dude, I love it. It's one of the things we hear often in our industry, and I've heard it since the beginning, is this thing called imposter syndrome. Now, I've never suffered from imposter syndrome, believe it or not. And I think it goes back to, where I was raised, with my father, who we had this intense focus on being the best me I can. And so comparison was never really a thing for me. I don't really give a shit what you have, what you do. There are times when, there's a little bit of weakness there, or like you have this, envy, a little bit. There are times for sure, but you recognize it quickly. And the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter how you compare. You're never going to be the best leader. You're never going to be the best cybersecurity professional. You're never going to be the best pen tester. You're never going to be the best CISO. You're never going to be the best CEO. Because none of those things, for one, none of those things will ever be defined. Two, they're always subjective. The only thing you're ever going to be guaranteed to be the best at is the best you. That's it. There's never going to be a better you. There will never be a better me. So why would I waste my time trying to be the best dad that ever lived? Try to be the best CEO that ever lived? Because all those things lead to comparison. And all those things lead to imposter syndrome. All those things lead to inadequacy. All those things lead to me questioning myself. Am I good enough? Am I good enough? Fuck it. Be the best you. Wake up every morning. Question yourself. Be open to criticism. Be open to people challenging you. And just focus on being the best you. And that requires you to be honest. That requires you to be humble. It requires you to admit that you suck at shit. Shit. And it requires you to seek help. If I'm going to be the best me I can be and I don't have the skills to get over this problem I'm currently facing, well, in order for me to be the best me I'm going to have to talk to my wife about it. I'm going to have to talk to Matt about it. Or I'm going to have to talk to a therapist about it. Whatever. Just focus on you. And the second thing about joy, my work wife, his name is Evan. It's a love-hate relationship. I love him some days. Some days I just want to stab him in the neck. But he's my best, I wouldn't be where I'm at without that guy. He's the opposite of me in a lot of ways. But anyway, one of the things that really bothered me as a friend, and this is, I think, another piece of advice I can give, is be the friend who tells people the truth. Don't be the friend that reinforces shitty attitudes because you're too fucking scared to say something. If you see a friend hurting themselves, destroying themselves, making unhealthy choices, bad choices, say something for crying out fucking loud. I've seen so many times where people they think that love is just accepting whatever the fuck your friend is doing. That's not love. Love is wanting what's best for them. Understanding that shitty choices have consequences. I want you to make good choices. I want you to realize the benefits of these good choices. So anyway, Kevin He's one of those guys, I think, that grew up, it was never enough. It was never enough, never enough, never enough. Well, he's a business partner of mine, and I'm 60%, he's 40%. That's how the ownership structure works. So I get to determine how much he makes every year. And every year I kept hearing, I want to make more, I want to make more. How much, Kevin? How much is enough? $1 million a year? Yeah. All right, what's it going to be next year? The year after, the year after. The problem is you miss the joy because the joy is in contentment. Finding what the situation you're currently in and all the blessings that it comes and being content. I learned this from where I live, man. The Mexican people, my maintenance guy, his name is Juan. I fucking love Juan. I told him one day, as I was watching him work on the pool and I was drinking my coffee, I'm like, Juan. And he's like, what? And he comes over. I'm like, I got to let you know, brother, you inspire me. He's like, what? Me? Yeah, you. He's like, how? Because you're fucking content, man. Every single day you come here and you're happy, you're motivated, you do this great job, and like, you're just content, brother. And contentment doesn't come from how much you got. It doesn't come from status. It doesn't come from poise. It comes from like within, man. I mean, can you look around yourself and just be content with what you fucking got? And
you have to learn that, though.
It is a learning thing, but that's the thing about wisdom, man. At my age, at 54 years old now, my job is to try to spew as much fucking wisdom as I can. Because you get wisdom through pain. I learned this from pain. I don't want people to go through pain. Why don't you just fucking listen to what I'm saying? Learn contentment. Look around yourself. Because the thing is that I've learned about my own contentment, because, Kevin's comeback was, well, it's easier for you to say. I'm like, what do you mean it's easier for me to say? Well, you live in this, multi-million-dollar house in Mexico, this beautiful view on the beach, blah, blah, blah. Well, Kevin, you've known me for 10 fucking years. I was content when I was losing my house at the beginning of FR Secure when we didn't have enough sales. I've always been content. And the thing about contentment, it's crazy. The more content you are, the more you seem to get. How the fuck did that work? So anyway, I'm preaching way too much. I'm going to let you guys fucking talk because I can just keep ranting. Because this stuff, there's so much wisdom that we can share. And that's what it's important for us who are veterans of whatever discipline we're in and the age that we're at, that when you gain this wisdom, man, share it before you die. Because that's how you continue the ball rolling. If you're tired of seeing people repeat the same damn mistakes over and over again, maybe it's because we didn't share the wisdom.
I think it's also important how you share the wisdom. So I have a 21-year-old daughter. I don't talk about this all that much, even though I have a feeling I need to be talking about it more. She's been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Her mother and I were never married, but we separated when my daughter was 1. And so I fought to be in my daughter's life her entire existence, right? And I had a very staunch opposition to being in my daughter's life. And so dealing with my daughter who has borderline personality disorder, I don't know if you know anything about it, but it's a very challenging mindset to deal with, because borderline personality disorder has a major fear of abandonment, a major lack of self, and just never feels loved. And so there's an aspect of always projecting and interpreting things as
Matt, stop yawning.
People not accepting them and
I told you I'm always tired.
Always sabotaging themselves. There's a lot of similarity to narcissism and bipolar disorder and that type of thing. And so it's very much you're either all in with them or you're all out, right? So that whole thing is a really challenging thing, but I say that for a couple of things. You mentioned the contentment. I would also say gratitude. So depending on how you want to define it or what word you want to use.
Point. Yeah.
In the gratitude thing, I'll get into in a second, but love also is something I'll go into after this. But the first thing I wanted to say from a borderline personality disorder standpoint, I'm a protector and I'm a fighter. So I'm very well aware when my survival instinct kicks in. I can feel my shoulders jack up like I'm ready to go to war and fight and throw down, right? Many, many times it does not serve me. And it's like, I'm totally fine. I don't need to go into warrior mode and throw down. So I need to learn how to manage that more effectively. I say that because I'm not perfect with this stuff either. It's a constant process and journey and evolution with all this. But secondly, I realized some years ago that I cannot change her or solve her issues or save her and make her see the way that I see things. And so she has a very low view of herself and is always seeking validation from others because she hasn't gotten it from probably the source that she really yearns to get it from, her mom, right? So all that being said, my job is, we just had a headbutting session the other night because she's living with us and she wanted to have a couple glasses of wine when she got home from work. No one else is drinking. I don't drink. I stopped drinking a few years ago. I don't have an issue with it. It doesn't serve me anymore. And I felt like I was getting to the point where I was serving it. I don't enjoy that because, to your point, my service is to God and to be able to like share to others how to be the best that they can be, right? So understanding that I can't save her was a big realization, but I can model to her and I can help influence her and I can help show her a different way. So we had a headbutting session over that wine drinking the other night. I was tired, not in the best thinking space or communicating space for me. And so I was getting upset because she wasn't hearing me and she was just being defensive, right? All I really wanted her to hear was that I love you and I care about you and I want you to make healthy decisions and I want you to see what I see. That's it. Had I left it at that, that would have been a good impact opposed to the back and forth headbutting session that we had, right? So timing and communication is extremely important. Love then is also not a feeling or like a movie romance comedy thing of like, I feel like I'm in love. This person loves me. Love is an action. Love is defined by how you act, how you treat yourself, how you treat others. It's not just a feeling. So that's a really important thing for people to understand. In that gratitude piece, gratitude kills fear, doubt, and anxiety. And so understanding like how to connect into that is such a big thing.
Steve, I love you, man. You're speaking, I mean, because that's another thing.
I've been trying to tell you for like a year that you would love him, but it takes you so long to get here, man.
Matt, you're fucking on my vibe. You're fucking on my vibe right now, man.
I'm slowing it down.
No, I love you, brother. I love you too. But that's the thing, man. There's two things that I really want to emphasize that you pointed out there, because there's a lot of wisdom in that. The gratitude. You know, the fact of the matter is, when we talk about humility and gratitude, nothing that I have did I deserve. And people think, you know, because people say that shit all the time, like, you know, you live in this beautiful house now and all these things, like, well, you deserve this. The minute I actually start to believe that I deserve this is the minute I become entitled, the minute I become an asshole. This is a gift. Everything I have is a gift. My friends are a gift. My wife is a gift. This house is a gift. Where I live is a gift. Business is a gift. Because when you realize that it's a gift, you don't take it for granted. I also don't find my identity in it. Because I remember when my wife and I moved down here, you know, in August of 2023 now. Well, maybe 2022. Fuck, I don't remember what year it is. Anyway,
it was 22.
Thinking that. But when we moved down here, we were sitting, it was just me and her, and it was one of those moments of just intimacy, where we're sitting together. And it's, for people who don't know what intimacy is, by the way, if you're giggling, intimacy doesn't mean sex. Intimacy means, think of into-me-see. It's a deep, real, personal connection, conversation. That's what it was, right? So we're sitting here and we're looking at this beautiful view, sunset, and I asked my wife, I go, would you still love God if he took this away from us? Right now. And she said without hesitation, yes. I said, I would too. And the reason why I felt that way is because this is a gift. I have to recognize that these are gifts. When you go back to contentment, the reason why I look at Juan as an inspiration to me is because he's content. His gifts, the gifts that he has, he views as gifts. And, because I've had people say that too. Well, you earn this. Well, if I earn this, then why doesn't Juan have the same gifts I have? And the value of my purpose or my life it's not about the things I got. It's, am I living the purpose? Am I going to have? So I love the fact that you mentioned gratitude, because I think a lot of people don't take the time to be thankful. There's always something to be thankful for. So when you bring this back to a mental health thing, it's really easy to get caught up in, like, there's nothing to be grateful for. There's nothing to be thankful for. Even if you have to come back to, I'm breathing. I'm breathing. I ate something today. I slept last night. Those are gifts, man. Be grateful for those things. And the second thing you mentioned was love. Love is a choice. I don't have to know you. I don't have to feel anything to love you. I can just choose to love you. Right? And so, which really helps, because Matt's a dick. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not kidding, Matt. But I love Matt. I chose to love Matt. For me, it's always been like, love is a choice. Feeling is, I can't control that. Liking you, I can't really control that. That comes from feelings, right? So if I'm in a room with you and I'm like, I'm trying to get out of this room, it's liking, right? So I've had multiple conversations, because I've had times with friends where I told them I didn't like them, and that doesn't go over well. They're like, what? What do you mean you don't like me? I'm like, well, hold on. Let me qualify that. I love you. And me not liking you is not your fucking problem. That's my problem. So don't change anything. Don't try to be somebody you're not. Me liking you means I need to figure out a way to enjoy the time that I spend with you, to remind myself that, because I need to foster those feelings, basically. John Kittleton, if he's listening, he's a good friend of mine. I love him. But man, he was the guy that one morning we got up for breakfast and we're sitting together and I'm like, I don't like you. And he's like, what? I'm like, oh shit. I forgot what I said. Because I don't have a very good filter. Sometimes I say shit and then I have to like figure out why I just said what I said. The cool thing is that it's always authentic. If I'm speaking without a filter and I tell you, you're a fucking idiot, it's really what I was thinking. Now I gotta back up and like, why was I thinking that? And, do I care if you feel that? But anyway, so great. This is so much great insight, because there are times, honestly, where I feel like I'm so counterculture, that I'm so different, that I feel like I'm crazy. It's nice to have somebody validate. And so that brings up empathy, where somebody can empathize with where I'm coming from and validate that, no, Evan, you're not crazy. Or maybe you are crazy, but out of love, I'm going to help you uncrazy yourself. So that empathy is a really big thing, because I don't think there's a lot of that in our industry, where we put ourselves into, as much as we're able, into the shoes, into the seat of the people we're trying to help. Because I've heard a lot of times in our industry, people get frustrated with users. People are stupid. Stop clicking the fucking link, you idiot. Empathy. To them, it made perfect sense to click that damn link. They're not stupid. Do you know what it's like to be a CFO? Can you settle the books? Do you know what a ledger is? Do you know what an asset is versus a liability? I mean, to them, if they were asking you to, reconcile the books, you'd look like a fucking idiot. So that empathy is a huge piece, especially us, I think, in our age group now. I call us gappers, because we remember at our age what it was like to not have a cell phone attached to us all the time, to not be connected all the fucking time, to not have messages hitting me from 85 different fucking angles all the time. I can remember those days. And then I remember the transition into this. Cell phones?
Do you think they turned us into addicts? Because when I leave the house, I'm like patting myself down and I feel like I'm looking for something that I don't need to be looking for.
I think it easily can be. I mean, it's just another tool. It's just another tool. And so are you using the tool responsibly? And the way I think to understand if you're using it responsibly, because I'm a big cause and effect guy, like, are there consequences to your use of your cell phone? If there are, meaning your relationships are suffering, you're always on it, you're not paying attention to, person, whatever, pay attention, like that, back to that situational awareness. If there are consequences with your behaviors, it's a bad fucking behavior. If there are benefits to your behavior, then it's probably a good thing. But it's just another fucking tool, I think. It's how we're using it.
Yeah, I also think I've got a hammer sitting next to me. That hammer doesn't use social psychology, behavioral engineering to get me to continue to use it, versus all the social media have psychologists, behavioral consultants, and all that stuff trying to grab attention. And I think there's a lot of negative aspects to it. Was it Ryan Cloutier who had presented at Milwaukee ISSA? So Mr. Paint Chips had presented on AI and had gotten into discussing brainwave computer interface technology, talking about Neuralink, and then going into how Apple has AirPods that approved patent around brainwave technology with the AirPods, which scares the crap out of me, because most humans, especially in our society, don't know how to manage their mental and emotional states effectively. And so if you have somebody that could hack into that, even if it's just advertisements through corporations, you could then subvert messaging to be like, oh, why do I randomly want to buy a mattress right now? Like, suddenly I need to go like buy something. That's a nice case scenario.
And go back to the discernment. Even when you hear from an expert, Ryan is an expert. Ryan's a good friend of mine. Love him. Text him regularly. Just because he says that, is that true? I mean, I don't know. Whatever he said about, because that's the thing that we do a lot, I think. And if you want to fight a lot of the social media things and the mind control things, discernment is huge. Question everything. Go back to questioning everything. When I was a kid, growing up in a military household, my dad essentially beat into me. Stop asking why. We do this to a lot of our kids. Why, Dad? Why? Because I fucking said so.
Yeah.
And I get it. You get frustrated, and I'm tired of explaining myself to you all the time, and I want to assert my authority. But why? Always ask why. Man, you talk about Simon Sinek. My favorite book of all time, actually, is Start With Why. I love that book. Why? What's the purpose? I mean, always be looking for the why to even, especially in our industry, being that our industry is as fucked up as it is, because it is fucked up, by the way. I don't know if you knew that. It is. Look for Unsecurity version 2. It's coming out soon. Near you. Especially in our industry. Just because you have 20, 30 years of information security experience doesn't mean that what you're telling me is true. It doesn't. I've seen so many experts, so many veterans in our industry give advice that's completely fucking bullshit. And a lot of people follow it because you just put so much stock in where they're coming from, but don't stop asking why, because it'll give you purpose. And from a mental health perspective, I've always found purpose as being foundation for me, because I ask myself all the time, why? Why are you doing this? Why are you so damn passionate about it? Why are you up until 3:00 in the morning doing this thing? It's the purpose. It's the purpose. And then you go back to am I addicted to the purpose? Am I addicted to the phone? Am I addicted to the email? Well, are there consequences? If I look at my wife, and what about my relationship with my wife? If my relationship with my wife is suffering, that's a benefit that I really put a lot of value into. So maybe I'm working too much. Maybe, I remember when we were going through COVID, COVID never made sense to me. None of it. I'm a logic and reason guy. I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? Why are you shutting down schools? What the hell? I mean, it doesn't make any damn sense to me at all. And so, you do all this stuff, but then you can't say anything, because if you go say something on social media, you're going to be attacked. My own mother called me a bigot. I'm an only child. Like, you ain't got nobody else to like connect with here, lady. Why are you calling me a bigot? Well, I learned, and it was through asking why all the time, I learned that when people can't defend their position, when their position is so built on emotion, they can't defend their position. And so what they end up doing typically is you either change the subject or you attack my kid. And so I learned a lot about that in going through the COVID bullshit. But one of the things my wife said to me as I'm going through the COVID bullshit, she said, "You're off." And, me being the big guy, pride guy, I'm like, "The fuck are you talking about? I'm not off. I'm doing fine. I mean, everything's cool, man. What the hell are you talking about?" And some consequences, right? And I was off. And it wasn't until I went to Sturgis. I went to Sturgis during COVID because as soon as I crossed the border into South Dakota, life seemed normal again. I didn't have to wear my damn mask. Nobody was afraid of COVID. People were just being themselves. And then I realized, holy shit, my mental health was fucked up. But it takes this self-awareness. It takes this. I think a lot of people are suffering from mental health issues that aren't self-aware. They don't even know maybe they're going through them. Having people that you can open up to, that you can be vulnerable with, it's huge. And I don't know if people have that support structure. If you don't, maybe we can give some tips on how to build that support structure. But that's been huge for me in dealing with all kinds of mental health issues. So I haven't even gone into that shit.
Yeah. That's a big aspect of mental health, is being able to just reach out and have somebody to talk to. And part of the challenge too, especially for men, is that as we get older, there's an aspect of just wanting to isolate more and more. I'm an introvert by Simon Sinek's definition. Like, I spend my energy socializing, and I would much rather, I need to recharge in solitude and be on my own for a bit just to be able to recharge, build my energy back up. My wife is opposite. She's social, extrovert, gets energy by being out and being with people. And so we have a weird dynamic in that aspect. But I think part of the challenge is understanding, to Matt's point, being able to talk about these things and show. I'm a fairly big macho looking guy from the outside, right? But nobody's going to know that I do yoga and I journal and I do all this stuff that is not necessarily associated with macho type dudes. Same thing for you, Evan, right? Or Matt as well. But this aspect of being able to talk about this stuff and show people that it is okay for me to talk about this. It actually does help. And I'm not going to be persecuted, because that's a big thing from a stress and burnout standpoint, is that there's a great book called The Burnout Challenge. And so it's written by Dr. Christina Maslich and Dr. Michael Leiter. I base a lot of the stuff that I do off of their research. And so one of the things that they talk about in the book is that the biggest thing when they asked employees, what would help you feel less stressed out at work? The biggest response was, if I had somebody I could talk to confidentially and privately, where I wouldn't have any negative consequences or repercussion just for talking my mind. That's one of the biggest things that we do, is just provide that space.
It's the fucking stigma, man. The stigma kills people. It really does. And the way to overcome the stigma is talk. What we're doing right now, right? Having an episode dedicated to mental health is fighting the stigma. Talking about it regularly is fighting the stigma. Convince yourself that the stigma is bullshit, because 100% it is bullshit. That's what keeps people from, seeking, from being honest, from, admitting yeah, I'm fucked up. I need help. You may not even be fucked up, but I'm having trouble coping with this thing, with this event, with something I read on social media, with an argument I had with a friend or my wife. I mean, we all struggle. Life is a fucking bitch. It's hard. It's always going to be hard. You're not going to make it easy. There's no such thing as easy. In my opinion, it just continues to get fucking harder.
Totally.
The world it continues to make less and less sense. I almost wish we could go back to the farmer what do they call that? The early days when you just had the, like native like camps and shit.
Live
Where
off
the
the
guys just
land
went out,
type thing.
yeah, where the guys just, went out and hunted animals and brought them back and you cooked them up and, because complexity is the worst enemy. Complexity is the worst enemy of security. Complexity is the worst enemy of my fucking sanity. The more shit you keep putting into this brain, the more shit that just gets you fucked up. And you talk about the stigma. I talked to my son, I mentioned this before on one of the previous episodes of the podcast. My son was a police officer in Lenexa, Kansas. And during the whole George Floyd, Black Lives Matter thing, and that, you can explore the mental things behind that too, because that's fascinating, by the way. But anyway, I went down to see him because I was concerned, like, how are you doing, man? How are you coping with this? It's got to be hard. Being a police officer in today's environment, and so I went down and talked to him and he's like, yeah, it's hard. It's a real struggle. I'm like, so what are you doing to get help? Do they have resources in the police department for you to get help? And he's like, yeah, they do, but nobody uses them. Like, why doesn't anybody use them? Well, because it goes on your record, because of the fucking stigma. Instead of analyzing people for being honest, being transparent, and seeking the help they need, we should be rewarding people. We should be giving them benefits, giving them awards for being honest and going out and getting the help that they need. Because the fact of the matter is, everybody fucking needs it. Nobody's immune to this. Doesn't matter how big and tough you are, what kind of persona you put out there, whatever, Elon Musk, Trump, Biden, they all need it. We all need it. It's not, I don't know, crazy, man. It pisses me off because I think so many people live with the stigma and they think, well, if I say anything, people are going to judge me. People are going to think that there's something wrong with you. Well, there is something fucking wrong with you. That's okay. You know what I mean? There's something wrong with me. Who lives a perfect life? Oh, man, it drives me fucking batshit crazy. So in our industry, I pulled up some data. So the prevalence of mental health issues in our industry, there was a survey done by Times. It revealed that 27% of cybersecurity professionals reported a decline in their mental health over the past year. So we don't know the baseline. We don't know where they were at. But 27%, over a quarter.
That's
also
one in four.
self-reported. So how many people are actually going to be honest in that report? I would think that's pretty low.
Most people aren't talking about it.
Talk to.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
and I love the fact you brought that because that's what you just did right there was discernment. Discernment. Question the data. Right?
Well, it's also because I'm in it. So I have an understanding of what valid data and accurate data is to an extent, maybe more so than the general public do in regards to this area, right? I'm not an expert by any means. I just have a little bit more knowledge. So I love it. That's the thing.
And the reason why you have more knowledge is because it's part of your mission. This is why
I'm in it, and I'm reading research on a regular basis. This one. So with the work that we do, so I want to make this point too, is that I am not a licensed therapist. I don't do therapy, even though I am very good as a therapist. I didn't get the licensure because I didn't want the liability and the paperwork and on all that stuff. My focus is what's getting in the way of you performing at whatever role that you're performing in right now and going forward, right? Whereas a therapist would go back in your history and try to understand your trauma and all that stuff. We talk about that, but we're not really getting into it because that's something that we want a licensed professional to deal with. And we also do contract with people that are licensed therapists to do that work. But we're not focused on that work. We're focused on what's getting in the way you performing right here now, right? But
so going back to what going back to what Green Shoe Consulting does. That's what you do,
right? So we bring in performance psychology professionals like myself that understand and work with evidence-based psychology, applied psychology frameworks to help you understand what is it that you're trying to perform and do? What's getting in the way of your performance? And how can we help train the mental skills so that way you can do your job? So if it's You have anxiety, the imposter syndrome that you brought up. Let's kind of investigate that. What actually is that for you? And then how do we develop some mental skills training to help you overcome the imposter syndrome, develop some self-awareness, some confidence, whatever it is, to be able to do those things. We also bring in organizational consultants to consult organizations on how they're designed, because those are the bigger culprits in adding stress and burden to their employees.
I like that answer better than the one you gave previously.
Green Shoe puts on a pretty sweet experience. We had Steve come in, talk to my ISSA chapter. We had a little intimate gathering. It was probably one of our better showings, and we had great feedback, all sorts of great skills. Definitely, living your vision and trying to help people, or you are helping people.
Love it. On that same study by Times, by the way, additionally, 51% of these cybersecurity professionals have been prescribed medication for mental health concerns, with 49% currently seeing a therapist. I thought that was interesting data. Question the data for sure. Absolutely.
I see a therapist.
The president of FR Secure, one of my, that's another thing that good leaders do, by the way, is you're always looking for your replacement. The point is not me. The point is the mission. So you're looking for this replacement, and, Oscar Minks is my replacement. And so you empower them, get the fuck out of the way. But, him and I talk about this. What I don't want on my team ever is for the stigma to live. We can talk openly about it. You know what I mean? And create this environment. If you're a leader, assuming you're getting the help you need, create an environment where the people that you're leading can also do the same thing. It'll pay so many dividends, and it's sustainable, right? I mean, if we're just focusing on, return and profit and whatever, and not giving a shit about people's health, that's not sustainable. It'll fail. Yeah. So that's huge. What do you think?
I want to ask you a question, Evan.
Yeah.
You're a business owner. I'm wondering what your thoughts are. I know Steve runs into this, trying to come in and help teams. It seems like sometimes some of the leaders will say, oh, that's an HR problem. We're not supposed to, jump into that or help that. Or we need, are they certified? How are they certified? From like a business leader perspective, do you think it's better to approach the executive leaders or try to do it from the bottom and go up? Because I feel like that's something we could hear.
Leaders, man. At the end of the day, like I said, the good leaders understand how everything that happens here is now I might refer you to HR to work through them, my buy-in, yeah. And I'll give you an example. So we had I'll never forget this day. I was at lunch or dinner, actually, with my family, and I got a call from our HR professional at the time that one of Robbie was his name. Robbie committed suicide. Robbie was a penetration tester, young kid. I'll never forget that day. And I was like, what the fuck? What could I have done? I mean, I think that's how I think a lot of people, if you've ever had somebody that's committed suicide or, that's natural. I think, what could I have done? Was there something I should have said? Was there something I should have, then they reach out to me. What, there's just processing, right? So one of the things I came to the conclusion is, in order for me not to go through that again, for me not to question what could I have done, blah, 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 because that's guilt. Guilt tears you down, conviction lifts you up. We've talked about this before too. I'm never going to feel this way again. I'm never going to feel like I didn't do everything I could to create an environment where people could talk about this shit. I'm going to sleep well at night knowing that everybody here feels comfortable. There's no fucking stigma here. And so as a leader, I found this thing called mental health first aid, which you can Google it, mental health first aid, and we all attended that. the entire leadership team attended that, which is how to be a first responder sort of to mental health things, understanding that I'm not a therapist, understanding that I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist, I'm not a professional, but recognizing things, understanding people, creating an environment where the stigma dies, pointing people in the right direction, just loving people. So yeah, back to your question, Matt, it's absolutely 100%, no doubt, the responsibility of leadership to drive this shit. If you want a healthy organization, wake up, get on board, make sure you're covering these bases. It's my opinion.
Yeah, I'll add in.
Probably worth like $1.50.
My stepson is a freshman in high school, and this year he started wrestling. He hadn't really found anything that he clicked with, and then starting wrestling, he finally showed like engagement, motivation, and like he was into it, right? So for me, I was super stoked because I was like, finally, he's finding something, right? And I come from my hometown where I was born and raised was Moline, Illinois, and Moline's high school had historically had a very big wrestling program. So when I was in high school, Dan Gable was the wrestling mecca. He was the Olympic gold medalist. He was the head coach for the University of Iowa, led him to like 15 NCAA championships in wrestling and all this stuff. And so I started going back, looking at Dan Gable's videos and going back through all this stuff. And one of the things that he mentioned was, he was like, when he was in high school, there was a whole mentality that you shouldn't be drinking water during practice. That's a weakness, right? So he's like, coaches wouldn't allow him, the other wrestlers, to drink any water during practice. And so by the end of the wrestling practice, everybody would be gassed and could barely move, right? And then like the following year, they were like, you know what? You should probably drink water, maybe some Gatorade, something like that. And then lo and behold, they're still wrestling their butts off at the end of practice, right? And I think there's this common type of thing, the stigma, whatever you want to call it, of there are some people that just don't understand the importance and the value of these things. And they see it as like, no, you're not supposed to have water. That's a weakness, right? Not understanding that denying that component is actually preventing you from performing and working towards your talent or realizing your talent. And so you need to be able to exercise those things and have water, which is the mental health attributes of things.
Yeah, I agree. And I've always felt like the things I've gone through in my life, there's been difficult things, alcoholism, cancer, divorce. I mean, I've kind of viewed those things as scars. And they're scars for other people to see, for other people to be strengthened by. Right. So as a leader, I don't shy away from the fact that, yeah, I've been to jail multiple times. Yes, I've had 4 DWIs. Yes, I've, had this drinking problem. I've done I've had cancer, all these things, ADHD. And yet here I am. I'm here. Very successful company. You share those things as a testimony to lift other people up. So that, I remember sharing at a men's group once that I was molested as a child by my uncle. It's not something I'm proud of, obviously, but part of the processing mentally to get over that is to fuck the stigma. Talk about it. Confront it. It's not that it didn't happen. It did happen. And this is how I'm processing it. And so the more you fight the stigma, the more you process, the more power you take away from it. It doesn't have power over me anymore. It doesn't define me. I don't give 2 shits. I can talk openly about it. And when I shared that the first time at a men's group, and it was, in front of like 60 men on stage, it was amazing how many men came up to me after that talk and said, I was also molested as a child, and I've never talked to anybody about it. And what it reinforced to me was like, keep sharing, right? Keep sharing, because you're going to hit, even if you resonate with one person can relate to what you went through. They're going to be empowered. They're going to be strengthened. They're going to have this. And so, yeah, fuck the stigma. Share it. Set the example as a leader. Set the example as a friend. And if you don't feel like you're in a place in your work environment or even personal relationships where you can't be your genuine self, look for places to be your genuine self. And if you have to find another job, find another job, man. I would much rather be unemployed and have my sanity than work in a place and that shit fucking crazy. That's how much it means to me. And that's how much it should mean to you. It's not about money. It's about being the best me, man. And it's easier said than done. I understand that, right? But life is, like I said, life is fucking hard. And in order for you to do these things, in order for you to be the best you can be, in order for you to overcome, you need people that you can rely on, people that will love you, regardless of how fucked up you are. Regardless of how many mistakes you made.
Right. But that goes back to the point of being able to talk about these things openly, because for so long, so many of us have been taught that it's not okay to talk about that. And there's a level of shame and guilt on top of that, that just adds and adds and adds and adds to the challenges that people experience with this. And that's one thing too. I've been part of a men's group for the past many years, the Mankind Project. And that's a great space to get into, just to realize that you're not alone, and to be able to have some things, some processes to be able to work through and dig into what's getting in my way of the relationships that I want to have, the person I want to be, and all these things. But also, to your point, I'm hearing a lot of people talking about having others commit suicide around them. So being able to reach out, and just the suicide hotline, there's numbers to reach out to. And I think the one's 988. That suicide hotline could be enough to know that you're not alone, and have somebody there that is genuinely available to care and support anybody that's going through a hard time.
Yeah, 100%. And if you're on the support side, I think people will still commit suicide. They will. I mean, people will still suffer, but I don't need to carry the weight of, I did what I could do. I created an environment where they felt comfortable, they can talk about these things, and as a business leader, that's huge. And I'll tell you one example where I've been held accountable for this. We talk about mental health a lot at InfoSecure, and my own son, who also works at InfoSecure, I didn't know if I would, but anyway, love him. He's a great kid. He was struggling, with mental things. And he called me out. He's like, we talk about it all the time, but what resources do we provide that people can actually afford? I was like, good point. What, and they didn't know what resources we even provided, because, we have an HR function. And so but it caused me to, like, am I being a fucking hypocrite? Am I preaching this am I preaching this mental health thing, but I'm not giving the resources, not empowering people to find them, or even if they are, you can find them, like, you can't afford it. You can get to it, which is almost like worse. It's like right on the other side of that window, but I can't, so I love the fact they brought that up, because it did force me. I'm like, let's try to find something maybe together that is affordable, that people can reach out to. But even then, today, if somebody at InfoSecure, God forbid, committed suicide, I don't want to have to carry that weight. And I know that the fact that we've broken down the stigma, I don't have to carry that weight. Where if I didn't break down that stigma, I would lose sleep at night, multiple nights. I would feel guilt, So as a leader, as a CISO, a CEO, what sort of environment are you creating in your organization for your team to feel that same way? It's, because I can't even imagine what it would feel like to be so out of hope that the last thing I've got is to take my life.
Yeah. So a couple of things. I've been in my own situation where I felt very hopeless, and for the cliche of at the end of my rope, that is a really horrible place to be in. But it also, to me, there was a lot of focus for me at the time on things that were outside of my control, right? And so our brains are already set up to look for negative to any threats to our safety and well-being and the environments that we're in. But we're no longer out foraging and hunting for food out in the wild without protection and with animals that could kill us for the most part, And so today's threats really are focused on other people's expectations, opinions, and judgments. And so when that's your focus of those are the threats to you, they really have no impact on your safety and well-being other than being excluded from the herd, right? So that fear, there's some legitimacy to that, but it's really, for lack of a better word, bullshit. And so understanding what you really have control over and focusing back on that is a big part of the work that we do. Yeah, so that's just a big part of it. Of when we tend to focus on the things that we don't have control over, that's when we get frustrated, pissed off, angry, irritated, and annoyed. And that takes us out of being our best self, or at least working towards being our best self. And that's when we're really not great to be around.
Yeah, good advice, man. So let's talk about stress and burnout really quick. So another survey found that 66% of cybersecurity professionals, which I think, burnout is always like, it's kind of subjective, right? And it's different levels for different people. It's an individual thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why I hate comparing myself to other people, because I'm different. There's no single fucking person on the planet that's like me. And there's this individualism, which it goes against the herd mentality. You can't put me in a fucking bucket. You know what I mean? But there's this huge urge, take politics in the United States, for instance. Are you, Trump, Harris, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal? Fuck you. I'm not in a bucket. I don't belong in a bucket. There's no bucket for me. I have my individual thoughts and feelings on all sorts of different subjects and things. But anyway, on the stress and burnout thing, 66% of, respondents experience a significant stress at work. 63% noting an increase in stress levels over the past year. It's not getting better. 64% stating that the mental health impacts the productivity. Going back to our point, if you want the best employees you can have doing the best work they can be, take care of their fucking mental health. Stress and burnout. That's one of the things for me. So I've always been kind of blunt, candid, upfront, but mental burnout has always snuck up on me. I've burned out multiple times in my career, and it's always been like, it just kind of creeps. It creeps until the day it hits, and you're like, what the fuck? And now that I've been through it a few times, now it's like, I know I have I think the tools a little bit better to deal with the what the fuck. But I think so many people don't. So how do we deal with stress and burnout in this industry?
So there's a few things, right? So the way that we're designed in terms of green shoe consulting, having the performance psychology and the organizational consulting, is to attack the areas that are the stress and the burnout areas, right? So the performance psychology is really meant to work with the CISOs and their teams to help them understand stress. One is a natural human response. So there's different kinds of stress. A positive stress, we all need stress to take action as human beings. That's just the way that it is. But there's positive forms of stress of like getting married, starting a new job, things where the positives outweigh the negatives. So it could be challenging, but still the outcome is going to be positive, right? So working hard towards something, whatever it is, could be a stress component, but it's typically positive in that aspect. When it gets negative, we call that distress. So there's two kinds. There's acute and chronic. Acute is short term. It could be a loud bang that shocks you, right? Like I was sleeping last night. My wife knocked something off the end table, made a big noise. I jumped, almost gave myself a heart attack because I thought there was somebody intruding the house or whatever. So that big boom, it could be a traffic jam, a deadline that you're working towards. It's short term. It's acute, right? So it could be momentary. It could be a few hours, few days. The issue, though, is that even if it's acute, you're still kicking off your survival instinct mode, right? Survival instinct is meant to be short-term and just get you to notice a threat in your environment so you can either fight it, run away from it, hide from it, but get safe at some point, right? When the survival instinct kicks off, there's a bunch of adrenaline and cortisol kicked into your body, which is meant to get your body into the survival instinct mode to get to safety. The issue is when your chronic distress is typically on average more than 19 days. So your survival instinct is operating for way too long. Chronic distress, we get into some areas of job fit. The Burnout Challenge book that I talked about earlier talks about 6 areas of job fit. Your workload, do you have too little? You're bored. That'll lead to burnout, even if you're bored and not being worked enough. If you're overworked and you don't have the resources to manage your workload, which is pretty prevalent in cybersecurity, you're going to be tipping into like you're basically pumping the pedal or pressing the pedal to the floorboard too long. So not knowing that you need to back off and relax, right? There's your community. Do you feel like the people that you work with, there's a level of respect and trust and that you feel like others around you have your back? Or do you feel like there's a political environment, the knives are out, you can't trust the people you work with? Fairness, do you feel like the rules, policies, and procedures are administered fairly and equally to everybody? Or do certain people get exemptions and don't have to follow those rules? Like I got a CISO buddy where the CEO of his company won't follow the password policies because he wants his kids to be able to play games on his mobile devices, like Fortune 500 company, right? So drives him crazy. Then reward, which is a very simple yet overlooked aspect of like, it's not financial per se. It's more, do you feel like you're getting recognized for the value that you contribute to the organization, right? Do you get a thank you for saving our ass with what you do, which is not very often in cybersecurity? The autonomy. So this gets into motivation too, which is a whole other thing, but autonomy, do you have the ability to decide how you do your job, when you do it, or do you get micromanaged and that type of thing? And then the last one is values. So the values of the organization, your department, are they in alignment with who you are and what you stand for? Are their values out of whack, right? Like honesty. If somebody's not being honest and they do something to break that value for you, that's going to create issues on your relationship with them, right? So those areas are kind of what we measure for the burnout area. And then the burnout symptoms themselves are physical and emotional exhaustion. So just because you're tired and you don't want to get up in the morning doesn't mean you're burnt out, but that's a symptom, right? If you have a hard time, because the other aspect is when you are operating and doing your job for a long period of time, you start to get diminishing returns on your decision-making capabilities. So your incident response teams, your SOC folks, if they've been working too long and they are not taking a break and resting and recovering, they're going to start making mistakes mentally with their decision-making, right? So that being the first one. The second one is cynicism. So a negative response to the job. You hate your job. You hate your boss. That's a big, big red flag. And then the third one being professional inefficacy. So feeling like it doesn't matter what you've done previously, what you've achieved in your job. You feel like nothing you do really achieves anything or has any meaning. Those three things together lead, because I'm a former musician, to the Johnny Paycheck, take this job and shove it type of mentality. Mm-hmm. So it's understanding the symptoms and being on the lookout for those.
What instrument do you play?
Guitar. So if you've heard Chris Stapleton, he stole my voice.
All right. Yeah, you can quote me on that. This is being recorded, so Chris Stapleton, you're a big. Yeah. No, that's good stuff. So, on the mental health side, so burnout, obviously, I think, because that's the thing, like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's not always like there's something off about you, like I have ADHD, right? That's just a thing, right? And so you're kind of forced to either understand it, embrace it, and use it to your advantage, or I guess you could just ignore it. One of the things that I learned was, I think it was from Strengths Finders, was maximize your strengths and minimize your weaknesses, right? So what are my strengths? Well, the fact of the matter is ADHD, if you understand it well, and it's a superpower. I can do shit that other people can't do. It's also a curse. If it's not managed properly, if I don't have the proper support structures, sometimes the proper medication, I can destroy just about anything, and not even realize I did it. And so the same thing is like autism. I mean, I've met plenty of autistic people. They can do some fucking shit that I couldn't even imagine doing. So I think when you look at mental health things, the sad thing is the stigma is like there's something wrong with you. Like but what about embracing it like it's a gift? There are things that you can do that nobody else can do. What's really important is for you to approach it with an open mind, understand it, maximize those strengths, minimize those weaknesses. I suck with, like, as an ADHD guy, I suck with scheduling. I suck with responding to messages, Steve. That's why I never responded to you. I suck at managing things. I'm good at vision things, which then you go out and seek the things that are going to minimize those weaknesses. So my management team, they're not like me. They're better at the things that I suck at. So I think a lot of leaders feel uncomfortable with that. Like, I'm good at everything. I'll just maximize, I'll work on my weaknesses. Fuck your weaknesses. Don't work on your weaknesses. It's a waste of time. Minimize those weaknesses. Put people in place. Like, I suck with money. Give me money, I'm going to spend it on frivolous bullshit. That's what a lot of ADHD people do. That's what I do. So I have Kevin. Kevin never tells me how much money I have. I'll never know how much money I have. It's good, because if you told me how much money I'd have, I'd waste it. So I think so much of it is like just the self-awareness, like understanding who you are, being honest, being truthful. And then when you can open up, for me personally, when I can open up and share with somebody else who I really am, it's like freedom. It's a freedom I can't find at any other place. Yeah. Because I'm also an introvert. I don't like people. I really don't. I just don't like people. I'd love to lie to you and tell you I do, but I don't. They're being alone. I was raised an only child, and I'm most comfortable being alone, but I know it's really unhealthy for me to be alone all the time. If there's three things that are going to lead to my relapse, by the way, it's being alone, being bored, and having time on my hands. Those three things, it's going to shit. But I would never understand that unless I had the self-awareness. So, advice for people that are struggling with these things, about burnout, about maybe you're depressed, maybe you have suicidal thoughts, maybe you have ADHD, maybe you have ADD, maybe you have autism. There's a list of mental things is sort of endless. But the one thing that I think that's super important is just this self-awareness. Embrace who you actually fucking are. Not trying to change it. Embrace it. And look for people that can encourage you to make healthy choices, healthy decisions based on who you fucking are. If you're depressed, admit it. You're depressed. Should you medicate? I don't fucking know. I'm not a health care professional. But if you don't get to this point where you're actually going to be honest with yourself, I get asked a lot too. And Matt, you've probably been asked this. The more you share about, your alcoholism, people ask me all the time, do you think I have a drinking problem? It doesn't fucking matter if I think you have a drinking problem. It's not even the point. Do you think you have a drinking problem? That's what leads to change. I can give you my opinion, but until you own it, nothing's going to happen. So let's give some resources real quick before we wrap this thing up. And again, I'm sorry I talked too much.
Do you have any whack for this week, or did you skip that?
No. Matt.
Skipped it?
I have no hack to whack because you guys got me talking too damn much today, and there's no wife around here to keep me honest.
No, it's all great things to talk about, for sure.
Well, honestly, the whole point of the InfoSec to Insanity, the whole point of this podcast is my own mental health.
You just brought up the whole drinking thing. I told you before, I'm 2 years sober right now, but for the first year and a half, I was just telling people, I got in trouble. Yep, that's why I'm not drinking. Wasn't really publicly talking about why I got in trouble, right? Drinking and driving, not making smart decisions. But as soon as you start talking about it and normalizing it, it's like you get lighter and you feel more free. So that's why talking about the things are so important.
It's a way of coping. It's a way of confronting it. It's a way of taking the power away from it. Yeah, you made you made a mistake. Nobody's going to deny that. So then the question is, are you going to use this to be a better person, or are you going to use this to destroy yourself? And that's the difference between guilt and conviction. Focus on conviction. Fuck guilt.
I think that's also a challenge that you can run into with addictions like alcoholism or drugs is you try to say, I'm never going to drink again. Like, that's just an impossible thing. And it sounds so cliche, like when you're going through the programs and stuff, like, just take it one day at a time. You're not going to drink today. But it's just a much easier thought process than trying to be like all in and solving like the entire thing for the rest of your life, which seems like it's forever, but can happen at any time. The crazy things happen.
When you look back at the times you've said to yourself that you're never going to drink again, did those things come from guilt or did those things come from conviction? I know in my own life, when I said that, it was usually I woke up the next morning, I was really upset about something I had done the night before. I felt really guilty. So it came from guilt. Whereas the conviction piece is, because guilt always tears you up. It brings you down. It fucking destroys you. Whereas conviction is like, yeah, I made a mistake. I'm owning it. I'm going to be better. I'm going to turn away from that, right? And so it's that conviction thing that lifts you up. I think a lot of people don't know the difference between those two, being able to recognize, like, is this guilt or conviction? Because fuck guilt.
It's a skill you have to learn. I mean, there's so many of these skills, awareness, some, like, I take that for take it for granted because the military beat that into me, but there's other things, you know, guilt, conviction, just any emotional intelligence, that those are things we have to learn as we go through life because they're not taught. And depending on who you're interacting with, who your friends are, is going to determine if you're going to be able to learn those things or be around them.
True.
It's also where a good performance psychology coach comes in too.
Amen. Amen.
I think Green Shoe Consulting is a pretty good operation I've had experience with.
Absolutely. And I can endorse it just based on the conversation because there were so many like synergies on things that I can confirm through my own experience. You know, I think there's two ways to obtain wisdom. Wisdom is like, oh my God, it's fucking precious. Oh, there's nothing better almost than wisdom, right? And there's two ways to gain wisdom. It's either listen to somebody who has it, acquire it from somebody else, or the only way you're going to acquire it yourself is through experience, but not just any experience, the experience with pain. If it doesn't have pain associated with it, it's not going to end up in wisdom. It's just going to be another experience. If you want to avoid the pain, listen to other people who have already gone through the pain. Otherwise, go ahead. Enjoy the pain. It sucks. I think I enjoyed, 8 times going to jail. I think I enjoyed the 4 DWIs. I think I enjoyed the destroyed relationships. You think I enjoyed all that? You fucking crazy? So it's
crazy too because you can't force people to just like learn wisdom, right? Like the first time I met you, we were chatting. You're like, yeah, 20 years sober, alcoholic. I'm like, how can you like not fucking drink? Is that like a thing? Lo and behold, 2 years later down the road, I go and do the same thing. And now I create my own pain. I think
where did you go? Where did you go then for that support that you needed?
Oh, I reached out to you like instantly.
Because we had this rapport. You knew that I wasn't going to steer you away. So I became part of your support group, which is, honestly, it's an honor. But I think that just reinforces this cycle of like share with other people your experiences, share with other people your wisdom, fuck the stigma, be honest with people. Because when they do run into that thing, if they're not going to listen and they run into the same thing, at least they know where to go, Maybe
because they know you're not going to judge them.
Right. Maybe they won't put the bullet, maybe they won't in their head, and maybe they'll make the fucking phone call. That's the point of us, as even if you're not going through these desperate things, be open and honest and transparent with these things because you never know who you're going to fucking reach with it. If everybody did this, then, man, mental health would be a lot less of a serious issue than it is today.
Yeah, there was something I wanted to add to your self-awareness concept. to or statement was, there's a book I read, and I've got it somewhere. It's Letters to a Young Poet or Letters from a Young Poet. It's this aspiring young writer decides to write to his idol, Rainier Maria Rilke, and say like, hey, I really want to be a writer, but my parents and all my friends are telling me not to do that because writers just end up drunken and broke and waste their lives, basically, right? He's like, but I really think I have the talent to do it. Can you critique some of my writing to let me know if you think I have the potential to be a great writer? So the guy actually writes back, this very famous writer, and he says, first of all, no one has the right to criticize your writing. It's art. So it's self-expression. Screw them for critiquing it, for one. Secondly, he's like, our fears are like our greatest treasures guarded. Our fears are like dragons guarding our greatest treasures. He's like, so you need to slay your fucking dragons to get to your treasure, right? That stuck with me ever since reading that, of like feeling that weight of guilt, depression, loneliness, whatever it is, feeling like a dragon's foot on top of my head, right? As it's pushing down on me onto the ground, and then realizing that that's really not what it is at all, and that it doesn't have the power to hold me down as long as I choose to not allow it to, right? So changing the thought process and the perspective of it to be like, for any negative experience or situation, it could be a problem or it could be an opportunity. It just depends on how you want to look at it.
Hey, Ben, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yep, we got you, Steve.
Yeah, I had to pee. So I'm peeing right now.
Are you going to use the bidet after, or is that only for number 2?
It's only for number 2, but I did have to sit so that you wouldn't hear the puddle going on. Well, I mean,
Oh, that's the thing when you get older, right? You don't stand
Yeah.
up anymore.
So this is all part, an exercise in being transparent with people. Right?
I love it.
Everybody has to pee. So if you think you're immune to peeing, you're not. And the older you get, by the way, just in case, as you continue to get older, there's this thing called the prostate. The prostate continues to enlarge, which means peeing becomes more and more difficult. Did you know that, Matt?
I believe you told me that on more than one occasion.
It's all about me trying to be transparent, man, and to help people and share the wisdom.
That's why we love
People
you.
helping people.
So if
Right.
people want to run into Steve and Green Shoe, are you going to be at any upcoming events, conferences? I know you're probably at CypherCon. I think you're going to SecretCon.
Yeah.
Anything else you got going on?
I'm talking.
Are you going to be at SecretCon?
I believe so.
Awesome. I'm keynote. We're going to meet in person.
As long as Mr. Getzman gets me on the group, I don't know, whatever. As long as he brings me in, we've been talking about
Evan's the keynote. He can make sure.
Yeah.
I can stand him up again. I stood him up last year.
Yeah, I was visiting. That's fun.
So I'll be at CyberCon talking on February 13th in Chicago. I'll be in Austin, Texas, February 19th, I believe, for Telecon. And then February 25th, I'll be in Los Angeles talking at Planet Cybersecurity.
Man, you're all over the place.
A lot going on this year.
It's awesome. How has business been? Have you seen things going well? Are people in general, I think, embracing this concept of yours?
I think it's similar to the concept of we're in early adoption phase. So we're signing a contract with a Fortune 500 customer right now. So I originally intended to start with smaller customers just to get the what am I trying to say? The bugs worked out. But as we're building this out, there's so much demand for it that there's a lot of companies that have built in or are looking for support for their teams and from the CISO level. So there's a lot of people that are buying into it. And so it's a matter of just building out our teams and being able to deliver and deploy the services depending on who needs it. So we're getting a lot of interest.
I gotta tell you, and I'm gonna keep poking because I poke everybody. The CISOs aren't the only ones that need love. I'm not a CISO yet, or I don't know if I ever will be, but the middle management, lower people, we need that too. Show some love.
Do you need love, Matt?
I always need love. Your dogs know I always need love when they sit on
You
my
realize you're
face.
saying that while my pants are down, right?
That's
All right. No, you're right though, man. Because speaking of love, I'm taking us on all kinds of tangents. This is what ADHD does to you. Have you ever read the book The Five Love Languages?
I'm not.
yes.
So this was a book that I read because it made sense with my personal life. So it seems like you can't really separate. The people say separate personal life from professional life. You can't do it. So just fucking be honest with yourself. You spend so much time at work. You can't separate the two. You just can't, especially with
So
cybersecurity, because nobody can relate to
think
what you actually do.
do you think balance is then a misinterpreted word then?
Balance is where you're focusing your time and effort and energy. So I can choose to focus my time, effort, and energy on security stuff, or I could choose to focus my time, energy on non-security things, scuba diving, playing pool, building something, welding, you know what I mean? So that's where I find the balance. It's not that but still, they're so integrated, what I do professionally to what I do personally. I don't try to separate them. It's just where I focus my time and energy, mostly.
I think that's very wise.
Well, thank you. I work on my wisdom daily by making fucking mistakes and running into brick walls.
Making mistakes is okay then.
Yeah. So let me give you some advice. Don't run into brick walls. It hurts. That's wisdom.
I have done that actually.
Yeah.
Roller skating, skateboarding.
But on the five love languages, here's an example where I couldn't separate, where I chose not to separate work from business, or sorry, work from personal life. I wanted to improve the relationship with my wife. That's like number one. It comes before work, honestly. And I couldn't understand what actually, like I thought that I was loving her, meaning my love language is words of affirmation. So if you tell me, Evan, you're doing a great job, I feel loved when you do that to me. Whereas other love languages are like acts of service, quality time, where that's how somebody else, that's their love language. So my wife's love language was acts of service. So I thought that I was loving her by, telling her she's beautiful and all that stuff. And she wasn't feeling that because her love language is acts of service. So if I wanted to make my wife feel loved, I take the fucking garbage. Does that make sense?
Well, that's a good point too. As a leader, understanding no one person that reports into you is the same. And so everyone has their own love language and respect language, whatever specific language of feeling like they're seen, that they matter, that they belong, and all that, right? So being able to take the time to invest into understanding what that is a really important aspect of the leader.
Amen. It made such an impact on my personal relationship with my wife that I had all my executives read the same book and tell me what their fucking love language is. And so I found out that, like, our CEO now of FR Secure, John Harmon, his love language is gifts. So I'm like, well, fuck, every opportunity I have, I'm going to buy him something because then he feels loved.
Right.
Does that make sense? So when you're a leader, like, it's investing in the people that you're leading so that you understand how to love them, right?
I do want to point out, I think the love language, I think they caught on to what you're doing, because now when you go online to take the exam, you only get one. You have to pay if you want the other one. It's pretty bogus. You used to be able to get both.
Matt, we opened the whole night with you and commitment.
Oh, yeah, about the bidet. Yeah.
Exactly. We opened with this commitment, this final, like, are you in or are you not?
We're still live, by the way, though. We're like 2.5 hours in almost, still live.
I don't give a shit. People can tune out anytime they want to. I told you the entire purpose for the InfoSec to Insanity podcast wasn't how many people listened. Yep. It was my own mental health. Sometimes you just need to have a place where you can just express yourself, get shit out of your head and like into the air.
Okay.
So, and people, I think, generally will pay attention because they recognize the authenticity. And
yeah, well, I was about to say ironically, but I don't know if that's the word that I want to use. Having been a software salesperson for so long, I definitely understand and am aware that I many times would try to act in a way that I thought I needed to act in that environment, which was not always authentic. But for the most part, I would show up as my authentic self, which also created conflict because I'm not money motivated. That doesn't align well as a salesperson, but I also am value driven, and that always wouldn't align with the expectations from leadership in the sales environments. So that being said, like a lot of what I'm doing now is just focused on this of being authentic and being able to have conversations about like real things like this, because it is not a commonplace thing in the corporate environments to talk about this stuff, but it's so needed and so much like it's like bringing
HR.
water to people that have been living in the desert.
And you being
HR
at the
makes it terrible.
Well,
They don't
you
make
being
it
the
better.
C-
They make it worse.
you being the
Well, you
CEO
can't talk
of
about
your
that.
you being your own business is you get to do this now. You get to finally be free and be yourself. And if you make a shitload of money and become a billionaire, so be it. But as long as you continue to focus on what originally motivated you to do this, which is to be yourself, to provide value to other people, to love people, man, you're going to be so damn successful. I've given, I get asked a lot over the years, give me advice on starting my own business. What do I need to do? And my first piece of advice is commit. Either do it or don't do it. The half-assed thing, because what's going to happen is if you don't commit to it, you're going to be like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and you're probably going to end up with regret somewhere down the road where you're going to ask yourself, what if I would have done that? I don't want to live with that. That's why I was committed, and I lost my house because we didn't have any business. We didn't have any sales. And so, but this commitment led to, thank God you were fully committed, because you look back now and there's 120 some odd employees at FR Secure who are all making a great living in a healthy environment. I remind my leaders, not that they need it because they are 100% the same way I am. I would rather us not grow the fucking business and be healthy than make $1 billion and be unhealthy. Don't ever lose focus on that shit, because it defeats the mission.
Right.
So and things like this, for my own mental health, it's conversations like this that are so fucking important to me, because it validates me, because it's not the way the normal business world thinks. Fortune 500 companies don't think this way. Most companies, even small to mid-sized businesses, don't think this way. And I've learned that at FR Secure because we've got this very loyal customer base and incredibly important, loyal employees. And they're here because of this, because of the way they're led, because of the why. And I read that book, Start With Why, man, that validated, because I thought it was batshit fucking crazy. Like, why is nobody else doing this? Why does nobody else run their business like this? Everybody should run their good business like this. I don't understand why you would run your damn business like this. And then you read Start With Why by Simon Sinek. I'm like, I'm not batshit crazy. He just validated. Okay, so then I had my whole leadership team read it, and I'm like, right, we get it. We're not shit crazy. Keep focusing on what matters, So for people that are still, listening this far into the podcast, I have a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 different references or places where you can go to get validation, where you can go and learn skills to cope with this fucking hard environment, this hard industry, this hard world we live in. I'm also going to include, Steve's company. I think I fully endorse it. I'm excited to see how he grows his company and starts to feed this cooperative mission. My mission is to fix the broken industry. You're in it, right? Fixing the broken industry, we can't neglect our mental health, man. Give two shits about what controls you've put in place, what level of risk you've implemented, how many breaches you prevented, how many threats, your firewall has stopped. I mean, who gives a fuck about any of that shit if you're mentally gone, burned out, stressed out, going through a divorce, finding your comfort in medications and the bottle? Doesn't matter. You just sold out on what really mattered. So I love it.
And thank you very much. I will mention, so we're doing the research right now on stress and burnout amongst CISOs. So it's going to be peer-reviewed and valid research. We're going to publish the findings in a report called The State of Stress in Cybersecurity. I just happened to pick state of stress, not even thinking about the acronym being SOS. So there's some alignment with that too.
You're a marketing fucking genius.
I know. I'd love to claim that, but I don't claim to be a marketing genius at all. So I say that because I think Matt's already done it, but you can go to the greenshoeconsulting.com website to download a free copy of the State of Stress report to see what the 2023 version looks like. But it goes through a bunch of information like we've covered on the job fit criteria, the workload, values, community, and all that stuff, as well as a few different recommendations on what you can do to start to manage some of your own state. A lot of it gets into breathing work, relaxation techniques, and that type of thing. But the focus for what we do is really applied psychology. So understanding the roles, like incident response is such a big burnout area because of the long hours once a breach occurs, responding to it. And so we have a lot of cybersecurity leaders talking about the fact, if you're burning out your incident response people during the response, you still need them after the fact. If they're burnt out, they're no good to you afterwards. So understanding how to be able to notice and understand somebody's performance levels and when they're starting to degrade and when they need to take a break, rest, recharge, and those types of things are really, really important.
Dude, yeah. I've been incident responder all my life, and it's a roller coaster. It stays extreme up, extremes, extreme up.
Extreme highs. Mm-hmm.
And the valley, I mean, holy shit. Yeah, that's a huge area of focus where I think you could just specialize in that. Because I've found myself in really dark places. And not just that, but man, I've done some incident response work where I've seen things that I can never unsee. I've investigated child porn cases. How do you cope with that? How do you fucking deal with that? I mean, I've seen animal porn cases. There was a huge bank, one of the top five, I'll leave it at five, top five banks in the world. It was an executive who had an animal porn addiction. And that investigation tore me the fuck up. That was hard. Where do you go with that? How do you talk about that? You bring it back into this baseline of what's healthy behavior. Because at the beginning, it's way, way up. And then you see what you see, and it's the darkest fucking shit you can imagine. And then where do you bring it back? Man, that's huge. So thank you for doing that work.
Yeah. So anything I can do to help support you, Matt, listeners, anything, that's what we're here for.
I'm going to have to put you in touch with my friends down here in Florida. Their mental health cases. They're
fucking Marines. Show me a Marine.
It's 11:30 at night, and they just walked in with 3 pizzas. So,
show me a Marine who's not a mental health case.
Yes, the military does not do a good job to help you when you are transitioning out.
The biggest employers of performance psychologists is the U.S. military.
So because this podcast did go so long, and I think we were all over the place, let's continue this conversation. Let's do additional episodes, not immediately, but let's do additional episodes where we're more focused on specific parts of this.
Do you want me to keep us more focused? I can do that if you want me to.
Well, that would take respect. That would take respect, Matt, and I'm struggling with that right now.
Not talking when you're talking?
No, I'm just struggling with the respect thing, but I'll work on it. That's an area of focus for me. Is to respect you more, to be like, oh, Matt's like stopping me. Ask my wife about that. I suck at that too, man. She's learned to embrace now, like, yeah, he's just a fucked up individual. Because she'll say shit. It's not so much lack of respect. It's like, I don't know, maybe it is lack of respect. Fuck it. All right. So I'm gonna post so look at evanfrancen.com. I'm gonna post in the next 24 to 48 hours a list of resources, including, Steve, website, business, for people to just leverage, because there's, I don't know, we get like 1,000 views, reads, or whatever of shit I post there. But I think it'll help people. That's kind of the point. All right. Well, good episode, you guys. Fuck, I could have talked all damn night about this. Matt, what are you laughing about? You want more fucking pizza, aren't you? You got that pizza
No,
eating.
so he's got pasta
pizza,
over here. He's got pasta, and he like destroyed the whole thing already.
Yeah, that's a fucking. I could tell by the first look
Marine
at that guy. He's a fucking Marine. I could tell as soon as you shifted over.
First look, he knew you were a Marine. Just first look. So you got that going for you.
Nice. I grew up on base, man. All you fuckers are awesome. All right, that's it.
Yes, let's keep on going. Thank you, Steve, for being awesome.
My pleasure to be in here. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.